Sorry, right at the opening. We are here live with Nadia, a sacred physician, a spiritual physician, something I'm very fascinated to learn about and to dive into with her and her very multifaceted spiritual work that she does for this world. So, thank you so much for being here today, Nadia.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No problem whatsoever. I want to dive right into the spiritual physician. What does that entail for you? What kind of things do you work with as a spiritual physician?
So it kind of looks like being a doctor, but on a multi-dimensional level. Like you're coming to me with a specific issue, and I get to write a spiritual prescription of, okay, how do we unpack this issue? How do we heal the next layer? What's your homework assignment? I usually get like the next 10 steps that need to be taken in the direction of healing.
I'm here.
Okay, yeah, you froze for a second. And it looks different for everybody. Like it's such a non-linear position, but it's always come to me with the word doctor.
Excellent. And so do you go through actual surgeries with people and help them through actual, because I've seen experiments where they take people's tumors and you can watch it on the ultrasound as it shrinks away. Is it similar to that? Like, or is it just similar to shamanic healing?
Yeah, so it depends. Sometimes there is spontaneous healing. Sometimes there is like physical things that I'm allowed to do with my hands or with the energy. Most of the time, I will tell you it's about empowering people to do it themselves. Like instead of taking out whatever the issue is, like, no, you actually have to work through the things that cause the issue, or else it's going to come right back.
100%. Yes, and that's exactly the kind of healing I work with is psychological, which I saw that you also do as well. And some key diseases, quote unquote, though not really diseases, that a lot of the people in the spiritual community would find themselves diagnosed with things like a dissociative disorder, which is one a lot of people haven't heard of, but I found similarities in that with myself, and then actually being diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder and CPT or sorry, complex post traumatic stress disorder. All of these, a lot of us share in common, and then we also see schizophrenia, which usually, if the other things are not acknowledged and dealt with, you get yourself into schizophrenia. It's kind of the final straw with the full break.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
no,
you
I do work with all of those things.
Perfect. Yes. And when you're healing these people in shamanic means, what's the kind of things that you would bring them through to work out these issues that they might have been told is a disease? They might have been given pills, but there's a spiritual solution for it all.
Yeah, it always goes back to the soul being fractured, because the soul can't really be fractured, right? Um, it goes back to the moment where you decided that it wasn't fully safe to be here. And where did you put that piece of you? How do we go about retrieving it? Is there any foundation that needs to be laid before we retrieve it so that it sticks? Um, and that's kind of where we start. It's like a full history. And sometimes that's in childhood, sometimes it's in a past life, sometimes it's in another timeline, if you would consider that to be separate from past life. Um, and, you know, I don't know, I could give you so many examples of what that might look like, but it really just depends on the person.
Yes, absolutely. And is this where you bring in like hypnotherapy? Because you do some hypnotherapy as well, correct?
Yes, for sure. It depends. So I'd say my first, there is there is no hard and fast rule for my work. And the spirits will tell me right off, like, we need to work with plants first. We need to bring in tobacco to bring the energy back to the body, or we need to go right to past life regression because there's energy somewhere else, or maybe it's the bloodline. Um, and so we start wherever, and that's the spiritual part, right? It's wherever the spirits tell me to start.
Interesting. And so you mentioned tobacco. What work do you do using tobacco? Because we know this is like
I think you froze on me.
Yes. Yeah, my daughter's having a sleepover, so the internet's looking extra tapped tonight. I just messaged them to get off the internet. But
So your question about tobacco, I'm sorry.
Mhm. Yes, just that we know about it indigenously and their spiritual reasons for doing it, but where do you see that play out in a modern setting using it?
Yeah, so first of all, even and it's funny, even just saying using it is like, are we using it or are we working with it? And like I have to talk people through even the language we use around tobacco. We work with tobacco, we partner with tobacco, we consult with tobacco. Um, I work with it primarily snuff. I'd say is my favorite. I used to be a smoker, not knowing that tobacco was an ally that I needed to, collaborate with. But snuff is my favorite, and it's great because immediately it starts bringing in, when it's administered by me, I'll say, immediately we start bringing back energy that's kind of outside of the body that needs to be brought back in. And so it's almost like an instantaneous pulling out and putting it back in the body, back in wherever it belongs. And it can provide a foundation for deeper work and calling back one's energy.
Yes, and I think it's not an accident that you generally see an extremely traumatized bracket smoking. Like there's certain
Yeah.
people, like you don't see regular middle class people or upper class people just choosing to smoke out of nowhere. They did in the past probably because almost everybody was traumatized in the past because it didn't matter your money system. You were probably getting abused in some way, shape, or form. Where nowadays people are finally starting to be raised properly. Like not that it's perfect, but there's definitely parents that are really trying nowadays versus the past, but still the ones left by the wayside with parents that just could not measure up for whatever reason. They had their own trauma, but it creates this cycle of smoking. And
Mhm.
the problem there is that the cigarettes are toxic, but tobacco itself and even nicotine are fantastic healing modalities to help in so many ways. So I like what you said about bringing the soul back into the body because you can feel that because it has that. I smoked myself in my mid 20s. It was because I didn't start as a child. It was like a mid 20s thing that I got into and I couldn't explain why, but that was why. I was in this crisis point. It was like that 2012, 2013 where it was like really starting to shake a lot
Mhm.
of us and I didn't know what was going on, so I don't just started smoking and it was the weirdest thing for like about 5 years, but it did something that is very healing and we can take that with so many things like there's blue lotus you can smoke now. There's so many things you can get your hands on, it turns out, that are actually like rose petals themselves. Like there's many things that we can ingest through the lungs in that smoke way that is very like we sage our houses, right? It
Mhm.
can cleanse the inside of the body for so many different reasons. So that's fantastic that you use that. In what other shamanic healing modality?
Okay, sorry.
I was
What?
saying, what other shamanic practices do you pull in with your healing modalities?
Oh God, all of them. So I do a lot of collaboration with plants, with trees, with herbs, with the master level plants. I work a lot with, let's say, the land. Um, a lot of ceremony and ritual, though not the non not the mainstream kind, right? So I don't use ritual and ceremony the way that other practitioners do. Like I don't call in the directions and I don't have the same prayer that I read every time. Everything is about being directly connected and asking whatever wants to come through to come through. I do a lot of soul retrieval. I do a lot of mm, clearing through unique ceremonies based on what the spirits are asking me to do. I work with angels and demons and gods. I mean, yeah, I think all those are pretty shamanic.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive into I have an upcoming guest coming on July 9th, James True. And I just love his work. And he talks a lot about demons and using them Like there's certain things like they cannot lie. If you know their name, you can control them. Like there's so many things, and Aleister Crowley would agree with this as well. Not that they need to become our best friends, but they are something. They're not necessarily evil. They're just on their own journey. And it's really varied on which kind of demon it is. But how do you work with demons? How do you see demons, and how's that play out in your work?
Yeah, so I see them very clearly. I would consider myself a shadow worker. So as soon as I meet someone, I can pretty much see their shadow, their darkness, which is just the aspects of themselves that they do not, that they're unable to accept, that need love. I have yet to meet a demon that was inherently bad because everything at its core is looking for love. And I think they're essential, and I feel like I have the ability to love these parts in a way that other people don't. And that's kind of like, that goes back to a really sacred part of my work, is the ability to love, truly and unconditionally love somebody who's done something or holds an energy that other people don't accept or don't want to look at, don't want to love in them or in themselves or in the collective. So it's actually a huge part of my work.
Yes, interesting. And have you ever had them come through and speak to you directly?
Yeah, I mean, there's it's a huge spectrum, right? Demon stuff is a huge spectrum. I've had experiences from like full blown possession, in which case I say spirit or spirit, but I actually don't know. Like, am I talking to God? Am I talking to my higher self? Is there a difference between the two? Like, I don't know. Um, in most cases, like if it's a full possession, it'll be like, okay, we're not going to make full eye contact. We're just going to be here with them, and if they want to express, they will. But they need to be here. Like there's nothing to do with it. Let them be. Let them be here. Um, Demons are, I would say, something I do directly speak to, but you have to understand they're not separate from us. It's not like they are, like in some sense they are their own entity, but in a lot of ways they're not. And so they don't have like this, you know, separate, unique personality and will. They're always connected and integrated into the person. Um, so yeah, it's like Hollywood would show you something different, but that has not been my experience at all.
100%, because they're going to pick up and be attached to something that is within us. And that's why, like, if we heal that part of us, they will either go on their way, they'll come to the light with us, there's so many exit strategies they have, or integration strategies they have, depending if they decide to stick on the trip or not. And the same goes for angels. Like, you pick more, like, really negative, positive, and the way you can pick some up and drop some off on the journey as we're ever continuing on. Like, some people think their personality really changes sometimes, but it's just that they've dropped and changed so many different entities along the way, because the human is like a walking factory for things to attach to us, like the way we live our lives and the way our energy streams work. We're a food source for so many different entities, because even the higher ones can live on love. Like, a lot of our other etheric style beings are all living on energy, and that really takes away like the personal aspect to a large degree, because I know a big narrative in the collective is why me, poor me. And the truth is, it's like you're just providing the food source for this being. If you don't want this being around, stop producing the food source that is going to feed it. And especially things like borderline personality disorder, like that woe is me lifestyle, it's going to really perpetuate these kinds of attachments. But let's jump to
Mhm.
a question here. We did have a question from Dawn. Thanks for being here, Dawn, and Raquel. So about the tobacco, is that store bought or naturally cultivated?
Naturally cultivated.
Is that something like, so you get from a provider, or that you grow yourself?
Yeah, so often I will grow all of my own plants myself. It's really important to establish relationship with the plants through caring for them and understanding how they grow, why they grow. It's part of the plant spirit relationship piece. Occasionally, I will get it from other providers, but it has to be of a certain vibration. Like it has to be clean.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. If anybody, because Dawn, you're in Canada. Smokably, I think smokably.com is where I get like a whole ton of herbs, and they're just like herbs, like the blue lotus and the rose petals, and so many loads of other kinds. That was actually organic, ships. You can trust it because I know it's hard to trust smaller websites when you're ordering these things. I've literally put money out there and nothing came because anybody could throw up a website and ask for money.
Mhm.
But on to my next question. I saw that you have a church, and I read that like you don't like the stigma of a church, but that
There we go.
yeah, I'm texting him again. They claim they shut it off, but we'll see. So this church, so how did the church come about? What does the operation of it look like for you? Because there's a lot of us that are getting that messaging. Like, um, I'm a metaphysical minister, so I've absolutely gotten that messaging to start church. But like, I loved everything and resonated with what you said about what yours entails, because that's exactly it. It needs to be like an open of healing, love, and integration, but not like a priester or a pastor just telling you what to do. So, what does your church look like?
That's changed over the years. I mean, initially it was like, I'm not really sure why I'm doing this, but I know that I need to, and I know that this is the name it needs to have. And it's funny, I actually just looked up the name Sacred Heart for the first time like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, yeah, of course, that's what it means. I had no idea. Um, so, you know, when I first opened the church, I think that was 7 or 8 years ago, there was a lot of like regular community events, regular ceremony and ritual. Um, Maybe 4 to 6 times a month, I would have open community classes or ceremonies, um, just kind of sharing and weaving community. And then when I left the Pacific Northwest about 6 months ago, I handed that community off to several other practitioners, and I kept the church. And now it seems to be changing again. I'm being asked to do some like pretty serious missionary style work. Um, and reach demographics I never thought I would work with, and potentially have a physical location that looks more like what we think of as a church. But my primary directive is teaching people how to connect with God directly and through themselves. And so I'm there for guidance, but I'm also really careful not to put myself in the role of like the guru or like a traditional priest or pastor. Like, we're not reading off of a book. We're talking about what's coming up right now. And how do you tap into this for yourself so that you don't have to keep coming back to me? That's a business model. That's not a nonprofit model.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Because that's exactly what it is. It's we're all coming online in our own sacred hearts where our God spark is, the Christ consciousness, the middle pillar. There's so much language for this, and it permeates all of the deeper truths because it is the callback for a reason. It's exactly where we find our awakening is that divine spark within. So you find yourself like a facilitator of this greater awakening of people's own God nature.
For sure. And a community builder, I think, has been really big, like bringing people together who need to come together and forming these communities and then being called to leave and like let it do its thing and not be involved anymore.
So the first location, so you actually had like an actual church location?
Yeah.
So where was that? You said the Pacific.
Vancouver, Washington.
Oh, okay. Okay. Great. So there's an actual location there. And then in the community, like, did you find a lot of attendance? Like, did it get itself a big population where people were actually meeting in person?
Oh, insane. Yeah, over COVID, especially, I think that's when I picked up the most was I had 20, 30, 40 people showing up at my house, doing ceremony and talks outside. And yeah, the attendance was huge. I think probably served 5 to 10,000 a year in different capacities, in person mostly. Only recently I've gone more remote.
Mhm. And you're looking at getting an actual, like, church location. What's that process look like? Just to ever there's a lot of people starting to think about it, and what does it actually look like in real life, putting things together in place to get this going? Because there's a lot of online stuff happening, but still very, very especially in remote areas, like, the cities have a lot of stuff. Your
Mhm.
main cities, like, for me, that's Toronto, that has a lot of stuff, but as soon as you step outside Toronto, there's very little in the way of actual spiritual, physical places to meet.
Yeah, so when I was in Vancouver, it was pretty easy, and it became running a business, and I got disconnected from like my true work, I think, in that business mindset of having employees and taking care of people, and quite honestly, that was awful. It didn't go the way that I wanted, and I really was looking for more community engagement and other facilitators and teachers to join forces. But there was so much competition for money and clients that I wasn't attracting what I wanted in that space. Currently, my model is travel. So I travel all over the country offering ceremony, um, staying on people's lands. I just came from Appalachia a month ago, and this person told this person that I was going to be there. This person randomly saw it on Facebook, so I saw clients I would have never seen in person who showed up on the property, and that's working out pretty well right now. But I'm only just about to get rooted into a new location, so I haven't started looking for like a building or a facility yet.
So you're running, like, retreats, because that's another trend we see happening is these, like,
No,
sacred retreats coming.
no, I don't run retreats anymore.
Oh, not anymore. So was that the same thing, too much business, not enough spirit?
No. So that was kind of like a phase, and I don't know that I'd call it a retreat. I did some work with plant medicine for a while, worked with the DEA. And what I was finding was that I was getting a lot of people who wanted the experience, but they didn't want to put in the daily work of the shadow work of the rebuilding foundation, and the ongoing work that we have to do. And then something shifted in the collective consciousness of the mushrooms, and the spirits were like, "We're done here. We can't work in this space anymore." Um, so I put that down as well.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Interesting, yeah, because that's another extremely huge trend blowing up. Obviously with things like psilocybin, DMT, and then ayahuasca, which is starting to make its way into America, so you don't need to travel so far for it anymore. So when you say that they spirit spoke to you and said they're done, was that done with you working with it, or done in general with the what they're doing for humanity?
So I am not allowed to work in that space anymore because I view things in pools of consciousness, so pools of vibration, um, collective consciousness. I work on that level, and the collective consciousness, for example, of the psilocybin mushrooms has been, we'll call it tainted for lack of a better word, because of all the bypassing that's been happening in that space, the abuse that's happening in that space. It has changed where people can go. And so my energy, my work there is that's no longer the place for it.
Mhm. Yes, interesting. Yeah, and especially because not even just people trying to spiritually bypass, but just parties. It's a party thing now, and, it can be used anywhere, but I think it all comes down to the person and how that works individually with them. Like, you have that individual relationship and however you're gonna ask, because we see this with cannabis as well. Like, there's 2 different ways it can go. You can do it and be a stoner and not really get anywhere in life, or you can do it and be actually shamanically healing if you're using it wisely, which is to help see the shadow and then take that into like waking sober life and to work on those issues there. Because the one thing that these psychedelics will do for us is they show us areas that were blind, that our conscious mind kept us blind to, and they can illuminate that for us. But it doesn't necessarily do the work for us. Some people think because they saw the experience, they saw the trauma, they saw the past life, and they cried about it, they think it's done, but it's not done. You saw it in your initial
Okay.
Yeah.
Feedback. I would actually say that the bigger concern with working with psychedelics is it takes your shadow and it fully separates it from you in a way that makes it even harder to heal. So if you're avoiding anything consciously or unconsciously, if there's some part of you that is not giving permission for the experience, like all of that takes your trauma and it gives you PTSD on a spirit level. Like there's so much of that going on. Um, and that's my biggest concern with the hype of psychedelics right now.
Mhm. Yeah, I've seen it play out in all different ways, and it's done miracles, and it's also caused people to delay their spiritual awakening. So it really I really see it depend on how you use it and how often you use it as well.
For sure.
That's a big concern there. So as for your business, I saw that you have a podcast, but there's not is that something you do regularly, or is that new?
No, I just did episode 40, so
Oh,
I must be.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And is that do you have guests on yourself, or do you just go on and teach just go on and teach?
Yeah, it's a lot of wisdom sharing, a lot of storytelling. I have not had a guest yet, but I'm coordinating with one right now because we just finished doing a spiritual pilgrimage in Rome together, and so we're going to talk about that experience with the land over there in Italy.
Oh, well, let us know what's going on in Italy with how did the spiritual sojourn go?
I was shown the roots of Catholicism and the foundation of the Catholic Church and kind of the history of the divine feminine. And it was basically like an entire story playing out for us and showing how our work connects back to the original purpose of, I don't know, the religious work, so to speak, before religion got put on top of it.
Yeah, what are your thoughts there behind the divine feminine and how it had got a little bit twisted, let's say, by the Catholic religion?
Um, I'd say that's a massive topic that I can't sum up shortly. But I will say that the biggest surprise for me was that in visiting the Vatican, I felt like they were hanging on to secrets until we were ready, not hiding them from us. And that
Mhm.
surprised the hell out of me.
Yeah, that would be definitely we know something was up on the 24th. The fact that they told us about it, because you heard about the Pope opening the doors that had never been well, the Pope
Mm,
was and they announced that he was opening doors that hadn't been opened in a very long time. He opens them, and then, he gets sick shortly after and dies. And we're just left with no explanation really, except that they told us they were gonna do this, so
mm.
what would that all mean? But I guess if you didn't hear about it then, there was
No,
no talk of it while you were there?
no. So I was there actually when the seat was empty. It was very interesting. It was right after the Pope died. The seat was empty. There was what do they call it when they're electing the new Pope was happening while we were in the Vatican, and he was elected the day we were there. Like it was not planned at all. It was very surreal.
Yeah, it's extremely synchronistic,
Right.
absolutely. Have you ever heard of Matthias Stefano?
I don't think so.
He travels around waking up the grids and everything, and they did something at the Vatican a few years ago, and it was the whole thing's filmed, and it's absolutely remarkable. Like lightning strikes right at the peak of their meditation. There's like hundreds of people all meditating together at the Vatican, but the Vatican let them do it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing I was like, they asked for permission. They didn't get any pushback. They said yes. They were given access in, and it's like the fact that they said yes, I always thought meant something. So that'd be interesting to hear that they're I always love to hear people aren't as evil as we think because
Yeah.
everything is so complicated and nuanced, just like we were talking earlier about demons, that like there's so many different situations going on with the world that there could be a reason it's a secret. There could be a reason they did this. There could be a reason they did that. And we always just like paint everything so black and white and give it like that quick bad Hollywood script where the reality is actual humanity might sometimes in a weird way be more boring, but in another way be way more incredibly complex.
Hmm. For sure. Yeah. I mean, the whole experience was so it felt like the spirits were guiding us to see a big story. Like we went into ancient Rome, the Etruscans. They were they were known as like the water people. They worked with water as a deity and they knew how to do things with it that other people didn't. Water is a big part of my practice spiritually. And then, we got to see like old ruins and then we went through the Vatican and it felt like we were being told a story. And one of my gifts is being able to feel truth. So if I see something, hear something, feel something that's based out of fear, I know immediately. And if it's based out of love, it resonates, right? And we're going through the Vatican and like we see more statues of women than we've seen our entire time in Rome. Like women in popes robes and statues with no explanation. And we're like, what is happening here? Artifacts from Egypt that felt like I've been to museums all around the world. I've never seen anything like their collection. I'm like, this is weird and so cool. And then we get to the Immaculate Conception room, and all of a sudden, my vision goes black. I feel disgusting. And the whole rest of it was like bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. And then we got to the end, and the entire remaining floor is shamanic culture from around the world, artifacts from medicine people from around the world, all housed in the same place. Like, come on. I mean, it just could not have been any weirder and any more clear that there's more happening than we think there is.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it almost reminds me of like one of the laws of the universe when it comes to how humanity is treated is that they have to always tell us the truth. That's how they get away on cosmic law with doing all the things that are done to us because they have to always tell us the truth. And then you see it subtly laid out. And so having everything just like on display, because there's like a big, I've only seen it in pictures, but like a pine cone shaped fountain around outside the Vatican, clearly representing the third eye, just out there on display. Meanwhile, they spent years and years killing every witch, yet in their own Vatican, they display these things. And like you were saying, having all the shamanic healing stuff. Meanwhile, you went around killing all those people. So there's definitely something there where they're telling you the truth while at the same time doing all this other side plottage that they have been doing for so very long. It's just flabbergasting to see that they still remain in such power and a lot of people don't even realize it, like how much they still control the world and the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Okay, well, this was a good chat, and I just wanted to give you a chance to let everybody know where they can find you if they want to work with you, and you can let them know. And thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My private website is sacredheartshaman.com, and the website for my nonprofit is sacredheartmedicine.us.
Perfect. And I have her descriptions below, especially if you're looking on YouTube. But thank you so much for being here today, Nadia. And you have yourself a great day. And thank you to everybody who was here today. We'll see you all next time. Goodbye for now.